I'm Tom Fudge, and you're listening to These Days on KPBS. It's been 30 years since Congress passed the Airline Deregulation Act, and let's say the results of deregulation have been mixed. Air travel has become more affordable and flights have become more numerous, but these days flying is not much fun, and America's large airlines seem to be in a state of permanent financial turmoil. Even if you follow the news, it's hard to remember which companies are in Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Financial problems in the airline industry have reached a point where fares simply have to go up. The big driver is the cost of fuel. Anyone who's filled up their car recently knows how much more expensive gas is, and if anything, the rise in the cost of jet fuel has been even more dramatic. The cost of flying has already increased as passengers are now being charged to check their baggage, for instance. Numbers of flights are now being reduced. Remember all those urgent calls for San Diego to build a new and bigger airport? Well, get this. The number of departures from San Diego's Lindbergh Field is expected to decline by more than 7% by the end of the year. What does all this mean? Is air travel becoming something we'll just do less of? Will it cease to be a means of middle-class transportation? Joining me to discuss the ways in which we fly and the possible changes in the way in which we fly are two pilots who have written extensively on the subject of the airline industry. One of them is Patrick Smith. Patrick is author of Salon.com's Ask the Pilot column and a book of the same name. He joins me by phone. And Patrick, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Tom. Nice to be on.
Joining me also is Captain Karen Kahn. She's an airline pilot, an aviation industry expert, and author of the book Flight Guide for Success. And Karen Kahn, thanks to you.
My pleasure. Nice to be here, Tom.
And listeners, this is probably a subject you know something about. If you want to talk about what it's like to fly these days, how much you pay for tickets, how much you think you should pay for tickets, call us at 1-888-895-5727. That's 1-888-895-KPBS. Patrick, I'll start with you and just ask you, what do you think are the biggest issues facing the airline industry right now? What are the airlines up against?
Well, they're up against two things. First and foremost, obviously, the price of fuel, which at this point has thrown the industry really into uncharted territory. And it could go a number of ways from here. We could see massive industry consolidation. We could see certain carriers dropping out of the game altogether. It's really unknown. And the other thing that the industry is up against is this really widespread and intensifying sense of resentment from the traveling public. I think at this point, airlines are loathed and despised more than any other industry in the country, more than oil companies, certain types of lawyers, if I can get away with saying that. I think there's just a really white-hot sense of resentment out there now, especially that fares are starting to go up as a response to the oil crisis.
Boy, why do you think that is? I mean, why do the people of America hate the airlines?
Well, it's fish in a barrel. I mean, you had a long decline of service standards beginning around the time of deregulation. And, I do like to remind people, though, that at this point there's, and I'm going to get a lot of flack for saying this, but almost a sense of entitlement. I think people are spoiled because they're used to being able to travel for next to nothing. I think one of the reasons the most recent uptick in fares is so painful to people is that tickets were unsustainably cheap for so long, and we're just not used to paying a realistic fare.
Well, let me turn to you. I'm sorry, Patrick, go ahead.
Okay. Oh, I was going to say that, as late as 2006, before oil really kind of went haywire, the average airline ticket was about 15% cheaper than it had been in 2000, even though oil had gone up 150% in that span. And over the past 8 years, fares have dropped about 2.4%, while altogether jet fuel has gone up almost 200%. And
that, before I get Karen Kahn involved in the conversation, why have prices dropped even though expenses have gone up? Is it Patrick, is it just because people are so sensitive to price when it comes to air travel?
Well, that's part of it, but the legacy carriers, the bigger airlines, have been up against these very feisty, as I call them, low-cost opportunists, your JetBlues and Southwests and these smaller, very streamlined young carriers that are able to charge less, and the majors have no choice but to match those fares.
Let me turn to you, Karen Kahn. What do you think are the biggest challenges facing the airline industry, and how do you think they're eventually going to affect the airline's relationship with the customer?
I think the challenges are, of course, the fuel. That's, I think, our major problem. Of course, airlines tend to be, shall we say, the point people for getting hit, be it a natural disaster, be it a man-made disaster, be it this particular current fuel crisis. It's a tough one to avoid. I think the fuel problem is not going to go away. I think the airlines are going to have to be smarter about how they deal with it. And in the past, deregulation brought on the hub and spoke system, so we had a lot of airlines choosing to fly a lot of segments. We've got problems from that now due to the fact that you're getting air traffic, the delays. I think with the fuel crunch, you're getting a real sense of how do we really make this work and stop trying to please everybody.
And listeners, give us a call if you want to talk about air travel and the airline industry. The number is 1-888-895-KPBS. I'm joined over the telephone by Patrick Smith and Karen Kahn. Patrick Smith is author of Salon.com's Ask the Pilot column and a book of the same name. He is an airline pilot. Same with Karen Kahn. She's an airline pilot, an aviation industry expert, and author of the book Flight Guide for Success. Let's go to Joe in La Mesa. Joe, go ahead. You're on the air.
Great topic. Hey, I'm planning a trip to Thailand with my children in January, and I'm wondering, am I going to be better off committing to the airfares they have available now, or might there be deals to have? Is there an advantage in waiting for a while and seeing if something better comes along closer to that time?
So it sounds like the essence of your question, Joe, is are we expecting to see a big increase in fares over the coming year?
Yeah, or
over the coming 6 months.
About oil speculators and whatnot. Maybe oil's going to go down, and might prices get a little better in the upcoming months?
Patrick Smith, you want to take a crack at that?
Well, it's a roll of the dice. It's really impossible to tell. It could be higher later on. I mean, there's just no way to guess with that.
Okay, same answer from you, Karen Kahn?
No, I would say go early.
Go early. All right.
I think get your ticket now. Keep looking for the best price you can. If you should find at some point where somebody else has got a better one, you frequently can negotiate with your airline. Their whole goal is to book the passengers early so they have an idea of what they're going to need. I have seen fares as much as double within the last week or two before the departure, so that I always advise people, buy your ticket early, but shop smart and look carefully for what you need, and look carefully at the routing you get, because oftentimes you may find yourself going on too many flights to too many places you didn't want to go just to get an inexpensive fare.
It's also true that the fares tend to be very specific to particular markets. Because the fares go up on one route over here doesn't necessarily mean they're going to go up on routes between California and Bangkok. It kind of depends on the supply and demand of each market.
United, U.S. Airways, and American Airlines will soon start, if they haven't started already, charging passengers a fee to check their luggage. And Patrick, I think this is something you've written about. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that on the whole, what is known as airfare unbundling, which is the parsing of fares into little a la carte nuggets, so many dollars for this, so many dollars for that, is a good idea in that it allows people to purchase certain perks if they want them, and thus absorbing a higher share of the increased cost and keeping fares relatively affordable for everybody else. I think the luggage idea specifically is a bad example of that, because it's going to make the security lines worse. It's going to make boarding and deplaning even more of kind of the hellish scrum that it already is. The concept is a good one. This particular use of it is not.
So the concept is a good one. What do you think about